Good day everyone. My name is Eric Pananganan, BS Criminology 2 at Negros Oriental State University. So today I will be discussing more about institutional corrections module 4. So let's go. Institutional correction module 4. So in this lesson we will be tackling more about institutional based corrections, structures, management, standards, programs and services in the Philippines, two system-based approaches to corrections, the Bureau of Corrections or Republic Act 10575, the custody, security, and control of prisoners, care and treatment of prisoners, and release of prisoners, as well as to have good conduct time allowance or GCTA, prohibited acts subjects to disciplinary actions, BGMP, Republic Act 6975 and Republic Act 9263. Treatment of special needs or unusual offenders, emergency plans, movement, transfer, or prisoners detains, privileges of detains and sentenced prisoners, the regional rehabilitation centers for youth, the Child and Youth Welfare Code, the death row, and the last one is the rule on the writ of amparo. So community and institutional based corrections have both similarities and differences. So the similarities in these two is sanctions are that the individual is going through the treatment on the inside and they are continuing it on the outside. As well as the difference is community-based corrections are you're either placed on parole or given probation, and institutional-based corrections means that that the individual is placed in a prison or jail, which means that they are housed in a secure correctional facility. So what are the functions of institutional corrections? The functions of corrections are to provide control, custody, and care to any persons convicted of a criminal offense. Like providing control for correctional clients is twofold. So the first thing that needs to be addressed is the correctional employee, meaning to say that these employees work in any governmental jurisdiction in the country. So what are the two types of corrections? We have here institutional corrections and community corrections. And then the difference between institutional and non-institutional is that a non-institutional investor is an individual person, and an institutional investor is some type of entity, a pension fund, mutual fund company, bank, insurance company, or any other large institutions. So, what is more effective, the institutional-based correction or community-based correction? So, community-based alternatives to prison claim to be more effective in reducing than our traditional prisons, to be cheaper than prisons, and to reduce overcrowding in prisons and jails. So what type of offender is eligible for community-based corrections? So under community-based corrections, numerous programs are utilized in order to place offenders into the community to serve their sentences. Like these offenders are typically non-violent, low level of criminals. So next is the programs and services in the Philippines. So the programs in the Philippines is we have here human development and poverty reduction class, Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program, K-12 basic education, responsible parenthood, and sin taxes. So that one is the programs in the Philippines. Community-based corrections, it is a welfare program, a social preparation for people's participation services. It is also a family welfare program. a child and youth welfare program, as well as person with disability welfare program and senior citizens welfare program. So the basic social services in the Philippines is the social development. It has need to improve the access of Filipinos to quality basic social services delivery in education, training, and culture, as well as health and nutrition, population and development, housing, social protection, and asset reform. So the government programs and services, you know that in the United States, the most important examples of entitlement programs at the federal level include Social Security, which means that the program needs to prove monthly benefits designed to replace in part the loss of income owing to retirement, disability, or death. So the example of social services is to concise of facilities and services such as public education, welfare, infrastructure, mail, social work, food banks, universal healthcare, police, fire services, public transportation, and public housing. So, what are the governmental programs? It means that any program, fund, or benefit administered by or on behalf of any governmental authority is the benefit that the company participates or has applied to participate. So next is social welfare policy, which guides us that the government programs assess people in need, builds on the idea that a government has a responsibility to protect its citizens from harm. According to the principle, a society can thrive only when it provides safeguards for those who face risks to their well-being. So, anti-poverty programs introductions is the SRA, or the Social Reform Agenda, and the CRC, or Social Reform Council, that is Republic Act 8425 by the National Anti-Poverty Commission, or NAPC. What is land reform program in the Philippines? By the year of 1988, the government passed the Comprehensive Agrarian Land Reform Program. It is the program that was created to end unfair landowners practices by divvying up the land and providing proper documentation to its rightful owners, or agricultural reform beneficiaries. So, family welfare also includes not only planning for birth, but the welfare of whole family by means of total family health care. The family welfare program has high priority in India because its success depends upon the quality of life of all citizens. So, family and community welfare program, it is a program intended to assist socially disadvantaged families and communities to develop their capability in defining needs and formulating solutions, as well as setting up viable community structures to bring about social change. So, the livelihood seeding program, it is also called as Negosyo Serbisyo sa Barangay. That one is a program of DTI that allows a wider reach of business development assistance by bringing government services closer to the people through partnerships between relevant local government units and DTI organizations. So, youth mentoring. Youth mentors are matched with mentees who met them weekly for social and learning activities. So, mentoring can be provided one-on-one or in a group format. Okay, so social services include the benefits and facilities such as education, food, subsidized healthcare, job training, and subsidized housing. So, two system-based approaches to corrections. Annotation. The operation and administration of today's correctional institutions, it require contemporary management techniques, and the systems approach offers possible solutions to correctional problems. And then the abstract, it is the system's approach to corrections sees the correctional institution as being composed of many interrelated parts operating together to accomplish correctional goals. It is also applying the systems approach requires systems analysis, systematic analysis of alternative courses of action which might be taken to achieve a specified objectives. The whole system must be integrated, and each subsystem or part of the correctional system must operate toward a common goal. The nature of inputs must be also considered. Drug and narcotic offenders currently represent a change in correctional inputs, and the correctional system must develop programs suitable for these inmates. Ex-inmates are one of the outputs of correctional system, and their quantity must be maintained to prevent overcrowding as much as their quality in order to fulfill rehabilitational goals. Proper feedback is also necessary to ensure that a control point is in outputs. Correctional systems should also evaluate their outputs after they have been in the field, since the correctional administrator can learn from the evaluation of the ex-inmate on what adjustments to the systems are necessary for improved maintainability. So the system's approach to corrections thus involves looking at the total picture and weighing the liabilities and assets of each unit against another, subsequently creating a balanced system, like free of interdependent conflict and united in goal pursuits. It is also a bibliography is appended. So the two approaches of the Philippines correctional system, it is the Philippine prison system adopted two approaches for treatment of offenders. These are the institutional-based treatment programs and the community-based treatment programs. These programs aim towards the improvement of offenders' attitude and philosophy of life. Corrections also refers to the supervision of persons arrested for or convicted of that are sentenced for criminal offenses. Correctional populations fall into two general categories: institutional corrections and community corrections. To limit the length of incarceration, the Philippines also uses absolute pardons, conditional pardons, commutations of sentences, amnesty, parole, and good conduct allowances. Correctional facility rules are designed to allow prisoners to develop personal and social relationships. So next is the Bureau of Corrections, Republic Act 105/75. This act shall be known as the Bureau of Corrections. It is the policy of the state to promote the general welfare and safeguard the basic rights of every prisoner incarcerated in our national penitentiary. And then, what is the rank of the head of the Bureau of Correction under the Republic Act 105/75? The rank of the head of the Bureau of Correction is the Director General, meaning to say that it refers to the highest officer in the Bucor or Bureau of Corrections with the rank of Undersecretary as a civilian employee in the uniformed service who is authorized to wear the 3-star rank insignia as symbol of authority and command responsibility. So the role of Bureau of Correction is charged with the custody and rehabilitation of national offenders, that those sentenced is to serve a term of imprisonment of more than around 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. Next is custody. So what is the meaning of take into custody, it is the act of apprehending, especially apprehending a criminals, operation, arrest, or catch, or any type of capture, gaining control, or seizure. 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 What is an example of custody? The definition of custody is the care of a person or thing, generally under court order, so or the state of being held by force. So an example of custody is a parent having full rights to his child after a divorce. An example of custody is a robber being held by the police. So can a father take a child from his mother? Meaning like you can't separate a child from his or her mother. This rule extends to illegitimate children, that the mother, however, can lose her custody rights and parental authority if she is deemed by the state of unfit to raise her child. So who has the right of custody over a child? Parents of the minor child shall have the right to custody over their children, meaning to say that the right of custody accorded to parents springs from the exercise of parental authority, that under the family code, the father and the mother shall jointly exercise parental authority over the persons of their common children. So what do you call a person in custody? Inmate add to lease share. An inmate is a person who lives in a specific place, especially someone who's confined there like a prisoner. So you can call yourself an inmate if you get sent to your room, but usually inmates are behind bars in a big house. The three forms of joint custody, which are: first, physical joint custody. This is when the child spends significant amounts of time with both parents. Next is the legal joint custody, meaning to say that there are both parents make decisions over a child's upbringing. And then the lastly is the joint physical and legal custody. Next is security and control of the Philippines. Okay, so who is in control of the Philippines today? On June 30, 2016, Rodrigo Duterte was sworn in as the 16th and current president. So, the National Security Policy, it is a document which contains the statement of principles that sets the strategic policy goals and objectives of the administration in order to attain the state of or condition wherein the national interest of the Philippines, that the well-being of its people and institution, and its sovereignty and territorial integrity are protected and enhanced. So, with the president as its principal architect, Philippine foreign policy is anchored on three pillars. First, preservation and enhancement of national security. Second, protection of the rights and promotion of the welfare of the overseas Filipino. And then the lastly is promotion and attainment of economic security. Care and treatment of prisoners. All prisoners shall be treated with the respect due to their inherent dignity and value as a human beings. There shall be no discrimination on the grounds of race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. So, the rules are based on an obligation to treat all the value as human beings and to prohibit torture and other forms of ill treatment, that they offer detailed guidance on our measures to medical services. And then the excessive use of pretrial detention and the use of prison for minor petty offenses are critical drivers of prisons' population rates, meaning to say that overcrowding as well as related problems such as lack of privacy can also cause or exacerbate the mental health problems, and maybe it increase rates of violence, self-harm, and suicidal thoughts. Next is release of prisoners' good conduct time allowance. Republic Act 10592, or the Good Conduct Time Allowance law, allows for a reduction of sentences of persons deprived of liberty, depending on how will they abide by rules and regulations inside what they call this any penal institution, rehabilitation, or detention center. Meaning to say that this law, in relation to Public Act 7659 or death penalty law, reportedly does not cover PDL who have been convicted of heinous crimes as enumerated in Republic Act 7659. So, these crimes were considered punishable by death for being grievous and hateful offenses, and which by reason of their inherent or manifest wickedness. So, the application of the GCTA law resulted to the supposed erroneous release of at least 1,914 inmates, in large majority of which already surrendered or returned to government custody at the biggest of President Duterte. Prohibited acts of subjects to disciplinary actions. Acceptable disciplinary action is acceptable disciplinary actions that are verbal warning. So a disciplinary action is a reprimand or corrective action in response to employee misconduct, rule violation, or poor performance depending on the severity of the case. So BGMP, Republic Act 6975. It is the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, amending certain provisions of Republic Act number 6975, providing funds thereof and for other purposes. Republic Act 9263, it is otherwise known as the Bureau of Fire Protection and Bureau of Jail Management and Penology. It is upgraded, among others, that the qualification standards in this designation of the uniformed personnel in these agencies. Treatment of special needs or unusual offenders. Mainly, they require a special handling under correctional supervision. Like, these offenders include juveniles, drug offenders, varying gender differences, HIV-infected inmates, and the mentally ill. Republic Act 7277. It is an act providing for the rehabilitation, self-development, and self-reliance of disabled person and their integration into the mainstream of society and for other purposes. Next is privileges of detainees and sentenced prisoners. It is very important that distinction exists between rights and privileges. Rights are guaranteed by law, while privileges can be granted to individual inmates as long as discipline and security are maintained. Also, privileges can be revoked by prison or jail staff, but rights cannot be. What are incentives and earned privileges? Each prisoner is set a status within the prison based upon their behavior. These is called your incentive and earned privileges. Privilege visits. These can be granted by the description of the prison governor to reward good behavior or for the prisoner's welfare. And then convicted prisoners are generally allowed 3 to 4 visits per month, but this can increase as the prisoner progresses through the system. The Regional Rehabilitation Centers for Youth is a facility designed to provide intensive treatment in a residential setting for the rehabilitation of CICL whose sentences have been suspended. So it serves as a nurturing put off home replacement for children in need of rehabilitation. So the Child and Youth Welfare Code, otherwise known as the Child and Youth Welfare Code. It is legally defines that a special categories of youths includes youthful offenders and directs are the Ministry of Social Services and Development to provide comprehensive services to assist in youth development. Even before this decree, this had implemented the integrated human resources development program for youth, like two encompassing three program areas. First, economic self-sufficiency. Second, community possibilities. And then last one is the youth with special needs. Next one is the death row. Death row is the capital punishment, also known as the death penalty. It is a state sanctioned practice of killing a person as a punishment for crime. Meaning to say that the sentence ordering that an offender is to be punished in such a manner is known as the death sentence, or the act of carrying out the sentence is known as an execution. Death sentence prisoners in the U.S. typically spend more than a decade on death row prior to exoneration or execution. Some prisoners have been on death row for well over around 20 years ago. When was the last death row execution? 13 federal death row inmates have been executed since federal executions resumed on July 2020. The last and most recent federal execution was Dustin Higgs, who was executed on January 16, 2021. Death row, also known as the condemned row, is a place in prison that houses inmates awaiting execution after being convicted of capital crime and sentenced to death. So next is the rule on the writ of amparo. This is the petition for writ of amparo. Is a remedy available to any person whose right to life, liberty, and security is violated or threatened with violation by an unlawful act or omission of a public official or employee or of even a private individual or entity. Renato Puno's writ of amparo is a Spanish for protection, will bar military officers in judicial proceedings to issue denial answers regarding petitions on disappearance or extrajudicial execution, which means that we're legally permitted in habeas corpus proceedings. So the difference between these two writs is that habeas corpus is designed to enforce the right to freedom of the person, whereas amparo is designed to protect those other fundamental human rights enshrined in the Constitution but not covered by the writ of habeas corpus. So, is writ of amparo a special proceeding? A writ of amparo is a special proceeding. It is remedy by which a party seeks to establish a status. It is a right or criminal action. Hence, the application of the revised rule on summary procedure is seriously misplaced. Section 17 of the rule on the writ of amparo specifies that the degree or of proof required from the petitioner as a respondent named in the petition for the writ of amparo is to wit Section 17, meaning to say that burden of proof and standard of diligence required, that the parties shall establish their claims by substantial evidence. So the right of amparo is a legal procedure to protect human rights. Under this new legal remedy, state authorities can no longer use as a defense that they do not know where the missing persons are. So I think that's it. So once again, this is Eric Pananganan, BS Criminology 2 at Negros Oriental State University. This is all about institutional correction CA200. Thank you.